50 million views. You're listening to The Joe Cronin Show. The Joe Cronin Show.
The Joe Cronin Show.
I hope you hang your mother.
What's up, guys? Welcome to The Joe Cronin Show, or this little brief video, guys. I know that you've sent me a million messages about this all week, or at least the last few days. It feels like it's been all week. Yes, I am fully aware, and I know I haven't made a video on it. There was other things I was doing, and this is really pretty big news, and I know that I probably should have commented on it like right away, because immediately I went, oh my God, this is real. And I've really been thinking about it. By the way, it's cold down here, so I'm like all bundled up looking like a psycho. Bruce Pritchard returns to the WWE. Bruce Pritchard, man, this is crazy but weird, and I don't even know what to think about this. I typically do. Well, let's start at the beginning. First of all, Bruce Pritchard since 1987 to about 2006 or 7 or so, he worked for the WWE. Of course, he was Brother Love. When I was a kid, that was basically the way I knew him. And later on, I would begin to realize that Bruce Pritchard was a backstage worker, or like a very important person in the backstage, because every time there was an interview or something in the back, you would see Bruce somehow in the back doing something with headphones on. And I began to become aware that he was that, oh my God, in 1998, I had no idea, Bruce was still in the company, that he was, I just always thought that Brother Love guy got fired after a couple of years, or whatever. It didn't work out. But anyway, he's been there for some prominent years. 87 was, to 91 was I consider pretty good years, maybe to 93, maybe 87 to 93, I considered pretty decent years. 94, 95, 96, maybe not so much. And of course, maybe, but even in 2007, things were so much better than now. So he was really there for a lot of good times. And maybe that's one of the reasons why Vince is bringing him back. I'm not sure. He's been gone since 2007, whether being with TNA and bouncing around there. But how most people know about him now is because of the podcast he does with Conrad, Something to Wrestle With. It became, this podcast became the Joe Rogan kind of podcast for wrestling. And it became it in the last, I think, 2 years, I want to say. Because originally, there was no... Originally, podcasts in wrestling, for the most part, were controlled by people that did reviews of wrestling and things like that, up until, Chris Jericho's podcast really became very big. But, as an industry, this guy is a major insider. This was the guy that sat to the right of Vince McMahon for so long. This guy was essentially, he was vital to the WWE, and he did so many different things at that time. And I think now he's being brought in specifically for a creative role, which I get that. And one of the things, I just did a video the other day about WrestleMania 9, if you guys remember. I just talked about WrestleMania 9 with the two doinks, and apparently that was mostly put together by Bruce Pritchard. So that's a Bruce Pritchard idea right there. And his creativity is usually very good. When I listen to his insights, he's kind of like, he doesn't go as crazy as McMahon, but no, who does? Who goes as crazy as McMahon? He sometimes talks about, Vince does too many swerves and things like that. Although I think nowadays the company could use more swerves than I don't think they do very many swerves at all anymore. I would say a little bit more, not a whole lot more, but I mean, what swerves do we really get nowadays? Not as many. I think they could use more. Rather than the ones I can think of are like, Seth Rollins turning on the Shield and things like that. I mean, recently they did one with when Vince came out at the end of Raw and said, "Oh, Becky, fine, you apologize, but now you're suspended." That was kind of a swervy thing. But it'd been a while. But Bruce Pritchard is really, really known for a lot of this stuff and was there during really good times. 1987 to 2007 are the, those are all, there's three different generations of times. And all pretty much good, even though we give some crap to the 1995 years and stuff, but still, Bruce Pritchard from 1987, 87 to 93 is a solid time period, pretty much. I mean, it starts to waver a little bit, WrestleMania 7, 8, and 9, but it starts to come back a little bit for 10, 11, and 12, even though 11 is terrible. WrestleMania 11 time was not very good. But, this guy was around for so many different generations. The original Hogan sort of thing. Also for, the new blood or whatever you want to call it with Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels. And then he was around for the Attitude Era. Then he was around for the Ruthless Aggression Era and the post version of that. So it's just the guy's been around a while. The minute that the WWE went PG, he was gone. Bruce Pritchard left in 2007, I want to say. And that's about when the company really started deciding to steer PG. And certainly by 2008 and 9, they had steered the company PG. And by 2010, forget about it. So this guy correlates with that. Now, a lot of people say, well, what about Vince Russo? And I do agree, that Vince Russo, obviously, I think Vince Russo is somebody that, you could have as well. When he's under the umbrella, when he's under a filter, I think Vince Russo sometimes has some pretty good ideas. But, would they all be shot down nowadays? They probably would be. It'd probably be useless almost to have the guy there. And maybe all of us undervalued what Bruce Pritchard brought to the WWE in a creative aspect back then. Now, the big debate going on right now is Bruce Pritchard a yes man? Was he hired to be a yes man? Is that why Bruce Pritchard is in the WWE at this point? Is he just going to be a yes man for Vince McMahon, or is he the anti-yes man? I don't know. Allegedly, he was fired for bringing a gun to work back in the day of 2007, which just doesn't feel like back in the day at all. That feels like it was 5 years ago, but it wasn't. It was almost over 10 years ago. He had the gun because his family was displaced. He was dealing with personal issues, and he didn't want to just leave the gun somewhere, whatever. So he brought it to work with him, and Stephanie fired him, and Stephanie was looking for a reason to fire him. And I don't know, man. I don't understand why there was all this backlash to Paul Heyman, who was having a successful run with SmackDown. They wanted to get Pritchard out. It almost felt like the kids tried to get the old guard out because they wanted to take over. But then they were never really allowed to take over once they got rid of Bruce Pritchard anyway. So in the end, it didn't even matter. And I almost feel like that's what happened. And now Stephanie and Triple H are so invested and engulfed in the company and other aspects, they're not thinking the same way they thought back then. Which back then, Stephanie might have been thinking, I want to do what I want to do, and I can't get this guy out of my way. And maybe she didn't like him when she was younger. I don't know. 1987. I mean, that's like having your uncle still being there to tell you what to do. And if you're a younger person like Stephanie coming up in the company and you want to own something, you want this to be yours, you're like, can we get Uncle Bruce Pritchard out of here? Because every time she did something, maybe Bruce told Vince. Who knows what the situation was. But with the success of his podcast and the notoriety he's gotten, maybe that's why he's coming back. Now, I wonder if Bruce Pritchard had not done a podcast with Conrad Thompson that had become nationally recognized, one of the top listened to wrestling podcasts, would Bruce Pritchard be back right now? And I don't know. I know that the podcast has been put on the WWE Network. So I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I wonder. I am very excited about this because any sort of move is good to me. It can't get any worse. So anybody that's thinking out there like, oh, no, this is just going to make it worse and Vince is going to get worse now and it's going to be whatever. I mean, maybe it could be worse with Bruce Pritchard showing up, but I don't know how. After listening to his ideas and listening to some of the things he's come up with, I don't always agree with him, but from what I hear about him, when I listen to him, and I'd have to really go back and do a study on all the things that Bruce Pritchard came up with, and maybe I need to listen to his podcast more, and I can find out, what ideas were more his than anybody's. But a lot of the times, the way he speaks about things, he speaks about it as if it was a collective, which it was. You know, Vince had this idea, I had this idea, and we talked about this, and then we decided to do that. But there's never any, I decided this, and Vince said, okay. I mean, there are some instances of that, but, you know, I just wonder what's going to happen. But he's in a major creative role, is what we're being told. Basically, he might be the head of creative at this point. And that, to me, is very, very interesting, that he may be either the head of creative or at the top of creative. He certainly is at the top of creative. We know that part. We know this guy's at the top of creative. But a major creative role. I mean, this is very, very interesting news. But now, listen, stick around for this, because a lot of people thought Arn Anderson was just, oh, you know, he didn't want to travel anymore. Arn Anderson, he's had enough. He doesn't want to travel anymore with the company. But now we're getting reports from a lot of people that Arn Anderson did not just want to leave. He was fired. He was fired for something he did at a house show, or something that happened at a house show that Vince said, what the hell is this, or whatever. And Arn said, well, I did that, or that's my idea, or I'll take responsibility for it. And Vince McMahon apparently has fired Arn Anderson, who's been with the company since, WCW. I think WCW went under like 2002, 2001. Arn Anderson joined almost right away with the WWE. I was always shocked to find out that, because he just didn't seem like a guy Vince would, be interested in, even though he should be, because he's a brilliant guy, I'm assuming. Arn Anderson's a legend, but now he's fired forever, and Vince is saying that there was a fight of some kind, and Vince told him he can never come back again, and you're fired, and all these type of things, and there's a shouting match, and there's always a shouting match, though, in these rumors. You ever notice that? It's always a shouting match or something. First you hear they'll travel and whatever. I mean, that may be the cover-up that they're giving. I mean, but we also might be looking too deep into it, and I'm not really sure. Vince McMahon was reportedly in talks to sell the XFL. This is a brand new thing that came out. This is very bizarre. Sports business report from Darren Rovell via Wrestling Inc. Rovell took to Twitter report that Robert Vanek suing the Alliance of American Football, the AAF, Charlie Ebersol. He alleges that he came up with the AAF because of that. He's entitled to 50% ownership. The lawsuit, that's crazy. They had talks with Vince McMahon to use the XFL name and purchase assets from the WWE and NBC for $50 million. AAF officials met with Vince McMahon, and that's when Vince decided to bring back the NFL on its own. So apparently the AAF, the football, the Alliance of American Football, the product that you guys all kind of became excited about recently, saw Twitter videos and all these things, that was coming out first. It was brought to Vince McMahon. We've got this football league, but we want to use the XFL name. So we talked about how we thought the XFL name had value. Believe it or not, as much of a butt fumble as the first one was, it actually had value and a name value for some reason, which I agree, because I can't even remember what the hell the Alliance of American Football is called. I keep saying AAF, and I got that, but American Alliance and Alliance Football, I can't get it right. But XFL, I got it. But that's when apparently Vince said, nah, I'm not going to sell it to you, but you know what? That's a good idea. Let's bring back the XFL. So apparently we can blame this guy as the reason why that is. We don't know if Vince had been thinking about bringing back the XFL before. But, I think it's bad news that there's two of them out there competing. Although, has anybody really been talking about the AAF recently? I feel like that's kind of fallen by the wayside. And that's the case. I'm not sure. Well, we obviously know that tonight there's a Ric Flair party on Raw. So we know that's happening. And And I really don't, I'm not really sure. A lot of people talked about Becky crashing it or something like that. That could happen. Maybe that will happen. I'm not sure. What will Roman Reigns say? That's the big news. If you guys want to hear what I think about Roman Reigns tonight and some of that stuff, then please continue watching. Thank you guys for watching this video. Popping up on your screen now are my other videos you might have missed, whether it's about Roman or some other things. Please continue watching The Joe Cronin Show right now and continue relaxing and hanging out with me right now with these other videos you might have missed. I'll see you tonight for Monday Night Raw and the Monday Night Raw review right here on The Joe Cronin Show. And thanks to everybody who signed up on Patreon. Shout-outs for that are coming. Patreon.com/Joe Cronin Show. And I'll see you then.